Assalamualaikum everyone. This is Fatima. Let me just give you a brief introduction before we can start with the session. Let's start with a brief introduction of Mubahith, the platform through which we are connected. So at Mubahith, we support medical researchers in turning ideas into breakthroughs. Whether you're running clinical trials, analyzing data, or publishing things, we offer expert guidance, paid resources, and a collaborative community. So you can join us to stay updated, share knowledge, and move science forward together. A brief introduction about myself. I am founder of Mubahith, and apart from that, I'm a graduate of Lahore School of Economics. I have 8 years of experience in FMCG, cement industry, healthcare, and e-commerce. I am currently working as head of strategic growth and supply chain at Center for Improvement in Healthcare Delivery, where I'm basically taking care of supply chain division in healthcare. We're working with doctors in National Hospital. I have my own startup with the name of Date Pop. It's an e-commerce brand where we make dates of different flavors, like date as in khajur. I'm also a member of Jahanara Memorial Trust, where we try to support less fortunate people in healthcare division and education. So we adopt patients and as well as students who need support. And I've already introduced you about Mubahis. Our guest speaker today is Saima Anis, who is a leadership coach, a board of director, and chartered accountant. She's a graduate of Imperial College London with 20 years of global experience in science, finance, and organizational change. She is also a founder of Amara Coaching and Consulting, where she empowers women leaders and change makers to lead with clarity, confidence, and authenticity. She can help you align with your goals and find your purpose in life. So I am expecting this is what she's going to tell us in our session moving forward. Apart from her professional work, she's also a semi-classical singer and a writer, blending logic, creativity, and purpose in everything that she does. So let's welcome her together. Over to you, Saima. Thank you.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. So I am very excited to be here. And should I share my screen? Let me know if you can see it.
Sure, Saima. Sure.
Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So we'll pretty much start straight away. So have you ever been paddling hard down a river only to realize it's not flowing towards where you actually want to go? Maybe it was a career path, a project, or even a relationship. You were giving it your all, but it wasn't taking you to the life you wanted. I know that feeling because I've been in that wrong river more than once. And every time I had to make a decision, either keep paddling or realign. So I'm Saima Anis. I am a leadership coach, a board director. My background is from chartered accountancy, and I'm also a musician and someone, most importantly, actually, who's reinvented her life more than once. So today isn't just about my story. It's about how you can make aligned, conscious decisions to reclaim your life and career. And I'll share the exact model I now use with leaders, professionals, and entrepreneurs to help them realign when things feel off track. So the way the session is going to flow is I'm going to share a bit about my story, and then I'm going to speak to you about the model that I've developed and hopefully get some feedback from you as well. And then I'm hoping to finish off with a piece of music. But this webinar is interactive, so I really would love it if you would interact with me through chat, and I'll really be looking forward to that. So with my story, so I spent my first formative years, so from 4 till 16, my formative 12 years in Pakistan, in a family where education and tehzeeb were everything. So my nani was an educationist who championed women's education. My paternal family was also very much into education, and my parents wanted us to try and achieve, and also believe that we could achieve anything that we set our minds to. So my cousins, quite a few of them studied abroad on scholarships, and achieving wasn't just encouraged. It was, in a way, it was like part of our DNA. So at 16, I migrated with my family to the UK. And I've had quite a few, actually, quite a few migrations in my life. So these migrations have given me extraordinary resilience. But they've also planted something else, because every time you migrate, you've got to adapt. You've got to try and fit into a new environment. And somehow along the journey, there was this belief that my worth was tied entirely to achievement. So I was accepted into Imperial College London to study chemistry and management. But there I also carried with me three invisible bosses. So you can see them on my slide. So positive intelligence, which is a concept by Shazad Shamin, he calls them the saboteurs. But in simple words, they are our inner critics, or those voices in our head which are always being critical of us. So mine were labeled as, when I look back, now I know that those voices were actually the hyperachiever. So my worth depended entirely on performance. Then I had the stickler in my head. So you must be perfect at all costs. And then I also had the hypervigilant, constantly scanning for all things that could go wrong. And behind all of them sat the judge saboteur, criticizing me relentlessly. So at Imperial, I was surrounded by really brilliant minds, but I constantly felt like I didn't belong. And that feeling didn't come from reality. It came from my own inner critics. So I was actually suffering from imposter syndrome. So imposter syndrome is when you have clear evidence of your competence. So you have your degrees, your achievements, your positive feedback, but you still believe you're a fraud, and you always fear that you're going to be found out. It's not humility, it's this permanent disconnect between your accomplishments and your internal self-belief. And that feeling was always there for me. So while I always loved music, writing, storytelling as a child, I was always really into these things. All those things took a back seat, because for me, the serious path now was academic and career success. So after Imperial, I joined, I felt like I needed to do something which would make me successful. And so I joined PricewaterhouseCoopers London, which is a big accountancy firm. So it was an environment of high stakes, long hours, constant exams. So I passed 8 out of 9 of the chartered accountancy exams in a year, but I failed one badly. And that failure cost me my London role, because I was based in London, and they wanted me then to relocate to Scotland. But I had just been newly married, and I decided that I didn't want to do that. I was quite emotionally drained. Now, when I look back at my life, I think that was perhaps my first real burnout, because it wasn't just tiredness, but I was mentally, emotionally, and physically depleted. So I took a year off, and I worked for the tax office there, the Inland Revenue. And I just then decided to go back to accountancy, because my inner critic wouldn't let me rest. It just said, you're a failure, Saima, if you don't. So you've just got to go back. So by this time, I had a 1-year-old, and I used to study from 4 a.m. to 9 a.m. every day with that toddler, as I didn't want anything else in my life to slip because I had many roles. I was, a wife, a mother, a daughter, daughter-in-law, and I would not allow myself to, for any of them to take a back seat. So my hard work did pay off, and I did qualify as a chartered accountant. I can't say I've ever really enjoyed it. I am glad though that I've done it because it's given me skills that have basically instilled in me immense discipline and logic. So I kept on pursuing at that, and until my husband a few years later decided that he didn't want to be in England anymore, and we moved to New Zealand. So this is where I live in New Zealand. This is the local beach, I would say, maybe about 20 minutes away from me, and that's a volcano. So soon after we moved here, and I came here actually just for 2 years, but I've now been here for 12 years. And although this was a really scary move, it has been one of the best steps we took for our lives. So I worked for an electricity company here. And it was a big company in New Zealand terms, but in world terms, I'd worked in bigger companies. So, but I had a big role here. I was a financial accountant. And because it was a smaller company, so the work load was quite big. And my same inner critics started again, and they drove me to exhaustion. I worked really long hours. And 6 years later, more after being in that role, I was still proving myself. I was working in corporate finance, still driven by the same saboteurs. And those saboteurs are the inner critics we spoke about. And I was soon heading for another burnout. Now, this wasn't, nobody was telling me that I needed to work hard. This was all entirely sort of internalized. It was an internalized narrative that I had told myself that if I don't work hard, then everybody's going to find out that I don't know anything. So the imposter syndrome and the inner critics were having a real party with me. So at my lowest, I remember I was head down in prayer, tears streaming down my cheeks. I was exhausted and unsure where I was heading. And I realized at that point that I didn't need a quick fix. I needed a different way of making decisions. So I started taking really long walks on the beach, and I reflected on why I was burning out again. And I knew that this wasn't just workplace pressure. This was a deep internal drive to succeed at all costs. These were shaped by childhood patterns, life traumas, societal myths, and the belief I had to have it all at once. So I embarked on a year-long leadership course, and I also explored a lot of other self-development courses and found this positive intelligence course as well. And I learned to name my inner critics, my saboteurs, and I practiced activating my sage. Now, the sage, as opposed to the saboteurs, is that part of the brain which is wired for creativity, empathy, and big picture thinking. So I built self-compassion along the way, and some days I still forget that, but I have to keep on reminding myself to, to be self-compassionate. So this has been a journey, and for me, to be honest, life is a journey of growth. If I'm not growing, I feel like my life is wasted. So to understand which direction I was heading, I gave space in my life for those things that I love. I really unboxed myself. I thought about what did I really enjoy doing, and I returned to music. And they always say that once you get on the path, you will just find the teachers on the way. So I found people like Arshad Mahmood Saab and Nafis Ahmed Saab. who are great musicians and composers, and started learning music from them. I got back to writing, which I used to love, and governance. And I allowed myself to try different things. So I found corporate governance through that. And I love that because it looks at the big picture and helps me figure out like the system view of things and see which direction a company is heading in. But what I really found, what I love, is coaching. And why I love coaching is because I believe that Allah has made everyone He's given gifts to everybody. And I think that everybody has a capacity to solve their own problems. But I find coaching really empowering because the person who's being coached finds the issues to their own problems. So it's not like I'll be advising them what to do, but I just create a safe space for them to find their own solutions to the issues they may be having. And I find that really empowering. So I now lead a portfolio career that feels true to me. And I did this, there were many methodologies that I used along the way, but I also used something called an action board. And this is a concept by Tara Swart, and she's a neuroscientist. And I basically filled my life with, I figured out what is it in my life that brings me joy and what is it that I value most. And so I found 5 buckets for me. In one of them, I've got my family and friends, my work, my music, my health, and other things. And anything that doesn't fall in those buckets, I've started saying no to, because what I found was I was so busy that I was spread very thinly across many buckets, and I felt like I was never giving enough energy to anything. So now, basically, when I've been in my 40s, I have, for the first time, learned to create boundaries and say no to those things that don't align with my values, and spend my time doing those things that I really want to achieve in my life. So that was a bit of my story. And looking back, I realized that these turning points weren't random. There was actually a rhythm to them. And there's a series of steps that I kept taking, whether at that time, I wasn't really conscious of it. But on reflecting, I now realize those steps. And each time I navigated a challenge, I would stop, reflect, I would see patterns and make more aligned choices. And eventually I realized that this wasn't just my survival instinct, it was a process that could be mapped, taught, and repeated. So that's how the spiral growth model was born. And I'm going to go take you through it. So, growth doesn't really happen in a straight line. It flows more like a winding river. So, when you're paddling down that initial picture that we saw, when you're paddling down a river, you sometimes circle back and you see the same landscape again. But you're not in the same place. You're seeing it from a different angle with new awareness. And that's how learning and behavior change really work. It's 2 steps forward and 1 step backwards. So there's progress, then you plateau, then there may be setbacks, and then you renew again. And each cycle actually deepens your mastery because the brain is retrieving and strengthening pathways. Maybe there are some psychologists here, I don't know, but or psychiatrists even, and this is what is called neuroplasticity. So we sort of rewire our brain to learn a new way of thinking or being. And here's the kicker. So our emotional brain, which is called the amygdala, it reacts faster than our logical brain. And that's why emotional triggers can pull us back even when we know better. It's not weakness, it's just wiring. It's just the way we've wired our brain. So if we want to change our emotional reaction, we have to practice rewiring our brain in a different way. So if growth is like a river, then what you need isn't to paddle harder, it's to learn how to read the current and steer with awareness. And that's what this spiral growth model is about. So there are 6 stages that help you realign when life feels off track. And as you can see here, I've got 6 stages: stop, pause, identify, reframe, align, and leap. So I am going to take you through this model. And what I would really love is I might give you a few interactive prompts. And I would love it if you could interact with me and share with me through chat some of the insights, because that is where the real learning will happen. So stop. So that is hitting the brakes under pressure. So when we keep pushing without stopping, we often make decisions from survival mode. And stopping creates spaces for the fog to lift and clarity to appear. That's why I put so much emphasis on stopping. It interrupts that autopilot that our brain is on. So inside a brain, there's a little almond-shaped structure which is called the amygdala. And you can think of it as your internal smoke detector. So its job is to spot danger and set off the alarm. So now, if a lion's chasing you, fantastic. You don't want to calmly debate your options, you want to run. But the problem is that same alarm can go off in situations that aren't life-threatening, like getting critical feedback or an angry email or a looming deadline. That's what we call an amygdala hijack. The emotional brain takes the wheel and hijacks the calm, rational part of your brain. So, in my first burnout at Pricewaterhouse, I didn't stop. I just kept going because I was driven by this fear of failure until my body and mind gave in. So let's say that in a professional scenario, your team is about to launch a major project, but the data coming in shows a serious flaw in the plan. Now, rather than pushing forward to meet the deadline, you pause the launch to assess and fix the issue. That would save time, money, and credibility in the long run. Or maybe you've been saying yes to every social commitment, because that used to be me. And yes to every social commitment, work event, and volunteer role. And you notice you're constantly exhausted and irritable with your family. Now, stopping at that point might actually mean declining new commitments for a month to create breathing space. So, what I would love for you to do now for the stop stage in the cycle is to write down one situation where you need to stop before deciding. And you can just please interact with me through chat, and we can see if you find anything that you need to stop before you decide.
What happened today? Yeah.
So, Ikra, is there anything in chat at all? I can't actually. Oh, there it is. I can see now. Yep. A new role. Yeah.
That as a planter. Put little pots there.
A planter?
Just put little
So,
pots.
Oh, okay. What do you want in it?
Sorry, I think there's somebody. So the next stage in the cycle is pause. And so after stopping, so putting the brakes under pressure, if we pause, that is basically, that shifts the brain activity from the amygdala to the prefrontal cortex. the part that handles long-term vision and emotional regulation. So the rational part is your prefrontal cortex. It's actually the CEO of your brain. So it's where you plan, you see the big picture, and you regulate your emotions. And you make decisions that match your long-term goals. But under stress, the amygdala shoves the CEO aside and says, I'm in charge. So pausing creates a neural gap where you can see multiple perspectives and access creativity. So when we stop or pause, even for a few breaths or a short walk, we're giving the CEO, the prefrontal cortex part of our brain, the logical part of our brain, time to get back in the driver's seat. That's when we shift from reacting out of fear to responding with clarity and intention. And that's where truly aligned decisions come from. It's because slowing down actually expands your view of the situation. So, for instance, for me, my move to New Zealand, it wasn't planned, but it gave me distance from my old life. And it showed me that I could rebuild differently. Instead of just keeping busy, I stopped and asked myself what was behind my busyness. What was it that I was running from? So for you, it may be a professional scenario, like if you receive critical feedback from your manager, it could be that instead of firing off a defensive email, you actually take 48 hours to process it, to reflect, and maybe to seek perspective from a trusted colleague. That pause may shift your response from reactive to constructive. Or let's say your personal scenario could be that you're considering moving to a new city because you feel stuck where you are. But pausing to take a week away, maybe even in that city, gives you clarity about what's driving your restlessness. So think of a decision you're facing and how could you create a pause before choosing? So I'd love it if you could share with me in chat how you could pause from something. So Omar's asked, is there a specific pause period? That could be, sometimes it could just be a few minutes, but sometimes that pause may take a while. It may take a few days and it may take a few weeks because you have to actually step back and allow yourself to process things before you take the next step. Anybody else? Yeah, as long as you're not, that's right, as long as you're not operating from a place of fear. Yeah, Kiran has said pause helps to make prerequisites and double checks. Absolutely right. So we're moving on to the next part of the spiral. So that's identify. So what am I identifying here? So I'm naming my saboteurs, so my inner critics, my fears, and what drives me, my hidden drivers. So in positive intelligence, what I learned was that saboteurs or our inner critics are the mental habits and thought patterns that work against you. So they live in the survival part of our brain. And these are fear-driven voices like the judge, the hyperachiever, the avoider, the hypervigilant. There's, I think, 10 of them. I'm just naming a few. And they push you to overwork. For me, they push me to overwork, over perfect, or over worry. So when I was at Imperial, and even later on in my career, these saboteurs were having a party in my brain. They were running the show. They were pushing me to overwork, over perfect, and always preparing for disaster. And recently, I was coaching somebody, and one of my coaching clients was offered a promotion that looked perfect on paper. It was higher pay, more prestige, bigger team. But when we slowed down to identify what was really driving her decision, she realized it was her fear of being left behind if she said no. It wasn't actually excitement for the role. So once she named that fear, she could look at the opportunity more objectively. And in the end, she turned it down and chose a project that aligned better with her long-term goals. Or let's say another situation is you could be thinking about joining a gym, but you keep procrastinating. That's quite often been me. And on reflection, you realize your resistance isn't just laziness. Maybe it's a fear of looking unfit in front of others. So once you identify that, then you can deal with that situation more objectively. So what I would really love is for you to write down 1 to 2 recurring self-limiting voices in your own mind and share that, please. So yeah, Omar is saying, what would people say? That's right. Will I mess it up? Fear of the unknown. Always having a sense of missing out. Yes, FOMO. What would people think? Yes, absolutely. So these are very common fears that we all have in our head, because a lot of us in fact, all of us at some point are looking for external validation. Yeah, outcomes or reactions, that's right. So the next stage then is reframing. So those saboteurs which were having this party in my head, how did I get rid of them? Well, I can't really get rid of them, but what I can do is I can reframe the story that they're telling me. So Brene Brown asks, what's the story I'm telling myself? So reframing changes that story. It shifts meaning, which changes emotions and actions. This is moving from saboteur to sage. The sage part of your brain is your, like I said, the inner guide. In some ways, I mean, I think of it as this battle between Firon and Musa in our head. Firon being the inner critic and Musa being the inner guide. And the sage is Musa, your inner guide, calm, creative, and big picture focused. It lives in the middle prefrontal cortex and empathy circuits of our brain. And the sage would ask questions like, what's the gift or opportunity here? And it answers from curiosity, compassion, and grounded action. So years ago, I led a finance project that was shut down unexpectedly. And my saboteur voice said, you failed, this will damage your reputation. But when I reframed it, I realized that that closure actually freed up my team's resources for a bigger project, which had far greater impact. So the shutdown wasn't a career end, it was just a redirection. Or sometimes we'll have situations where we launch a service or product and it fails. So we can either sit down and keep on worrying about what everybody will think, or that I'm a failure, or you can reframe it as this is a failure this may have been a failure, but actually this was a lot of learning for me and it's been valuable market research. So it's just how you frame a situation. Or let's say a friend cancels on you at the last minute and your first thought is they don't value me. But it could be that you could just reframe that situation as, oh, maybe they're going through something and I'll check in on them. And that shifts the frustration into empathy. So, what I would really like you to do is choose one current challenge and write a reframed version of the story you're telling yourself. Now I see your question. Is a longer pause an escape or an avoidance from a situation? I think when you can't, when you're avoiding a situation, you know that, like your gut knows that this is not a pause, this is actually me just not wanting to do something. So I think your inner guide will tell you when it's a pause, when it's an avoidance of a situation. When you can't, when it's chronic and this pattern keeps on repeating itself, that's actually when you need to pause. You need to understand that this is a pattern that I always do, and you need to pause in that situation. I hope that answers the question. So choose one current challenge and write a reframed version of the story you're telling yourself. Yeah, this is just a new pathway to my end goal. Yeah, absolutely. I really love that because that's having the vision clear in your mind. Yes, in every delay, there is some betterment. Absolutely. And that's where, tawakkul comes in as well. So the concept of tawakkul, that there is a greater being out there who is looking after our interests. Maybe in this delay, I'm being more practiced. Absolutely. No, some really good answers. Thank you. The next stage on my growth model is align. So say yes to what matters and no to what doesn't. So if you only said yes to what aligned with your values for the next 6 months, what would you stop saying yes to? So alignment actually means that your actions match your values, your strengths, and your current season of life. And it also means that your decisions match your core values and not just immediate wants. So this sometimes can be quite a difficult stage in the growth model. And because a lot of us have not learned how to create boundaries till much later on in our lives. So what I used for this stage was an action board, and that concept is by Dr. Tara Swart. It's from the book called The Source. And so an action board is like a vision board. And a vision board is basically a, a board where you it's basically what you want from your life, and you put that on a digital board or a physical board. You put pictures and images of it, and that helps you remind you of your priorities, goals, and values. But how an action board is different from a vision board is that an action board says if you want to achieve your vision, you actually have to take some actions towards it. So it's a visual map of your current goals, values, and priorities, and each are linked to concrete actions. So it's a tool to align your daily choices with what matters most. So this was for me personally a really hard one because, like I said before, I had to create 4 or 5 things in my life which I thought I had, and this was after a period of really inner searching and figuring out what do I want, what legacy do I want to leave behind, and what is it that I value most in my life. And I came to the conclusion that personally for me it was, for instance, family and friends, my business, my music, and a couple more things. So what happened with that was that I started saying no to things that didn't fit into any of those buckets, because those was when I said yes to everything, I was basically running on very low energy and I was spread too thin. So what I did was I shifted my focus to those 5 buckets and would put all my energy into those. So that would be, for instance, if I decided that I really wanted to get fit, then I had to spend some time in my day doing that. And the way I've learned to align myself is that I journal, and I would use those 5 buckets every day in my journal to say, well, yesterday, what did I do towards that? So what I would like you to do is write one thing that feels out of alignment for you right now. Medical advice on WhatsApp, okay. I think Amna has written about the previous slide, transitioning from one job place to another instead of seeing it as a fearful change. I view it as an opportunity to expand my skills and adapt to new environments. Kuratolen has written, putting my priorities at the bottom. Yeah, that's something that we all do. And that's where I think we need to start taking charge of our life ourselves at some point. Okay. So the last part of my model is leap. So you stop, you put the brakes on under pressure, you pause and look at the long-term vision and see perspective. You identify your inner critics, your inner guides, that is your saboteur, sage, Firon, Musa, and your hidden drivers. And whatever story the inner critics are telling you, you reframe them in a better way. And then you align your life to have to in the direction that you wanted to go to. And the last stage in my model is leap. So take one small brave step because courage grows after action. So courage doesn't come before action, it grows from action. So if we sit in one position and we want our lives to change, it won't just change. You can't. So that's why I don't really agree with this, some concepts of manifestation that people talk about, because I do believe that you have to, so you can manifest things in the way that you can have a big vision, but you actually have to take charge of your life and you have to make some actions and change your behavior to get that vision. So you have to take some steps to do that. So those small deliberate steps then create momentum. So clarity only grows when we actually take the step and the leap to do something different. So for instance, my leap was leaving the corporate accountancy world to coach leaders, to serve on boards, and to return to music. So let's say you've been wanting to lead a cross-departmental project, but you feel really nervous about it. But so what you could do is you could volunteer to co-lead a similar initiative first, and you could build confidence for bigger leaps later. Or let's say you've been thinking about starting a creative hobby for years. So maybe you just sign up for a short beginner's course. A small leap could then grow into something much bigger, which is like what happened with my music. So I mean, I was reading this book called Atomic Habits. I can't remember who the author is, but in it, there's this concept of 1% improvement every day towards your goal. And that is what I do. And when I'm journaling things, that helps me identify, oh, okay, in my family bucket, yes, I did spend, a bit of time with my daughter, or I called my parents, or whatever it is that I want to achieve. So I'm always kind of moving a little bit forward towards achieving what I want to achieve in my life. So what I would like you to do now is write one small leap you can take this week towards where you want your life to lead. Yeah, James Clear, that's right. Atomic Habits by James Clear. So what small leap can you take this week? Start looking into different options. I should extend my pause phase. And things might start getting clearer for you then, Umar. Start gym again. Yeah. Work on my passions such as art. Yes, I think those passions that we think are not important are actually so important. That creativity part of our brain is so important to make things clearer for us. So thank you. So been through the growth spiral growth model, and the conclusion is your growth is spiral. It's never a straight climb, and it's a spiral of learning and return. So pausing and checking alignment changes everything, because if we, like I said, that I literally will say, well, should I be doing something because this doesn't fall? I have told myself that I really want to achieve this. And if I want to achieve this, then does it fall under what I want to do? And if it doesn't, then maybe I should say no to it. So that really works. And small conscious shifts, so that 1% improvement every day towards your goal leads to big reinventions. So really like you to try the spiral model this week for one decision, and I'd be happy to send that through as a PDF for people who want it. And your spiral really might not look like mine. It may be very different from the journey that I've had, but you get to choose how you move through it. So if you want to explore your own spiral, you can definitely share your experience with me. And these are my contact details, and I will send them through to Fatima and Ikra later, and they can possibly share that with you. And I'll come back to this slide. I've got Amna Salim saying, me time is an important factor of our life, which we forget always in other people's lives. That's absolutely right. And that space, that is why I've got to stop and pause. I think that is the most important part of our spiral, because until you stop and you reflect on what you want to achieve, you're not going to achieve. You're not going to be able to take the next few steps. So growth is spiral. It reminds me of a verse in Urdu, तवाफ़ काबा दिल में लकीरों पर नहीं चलते. Wow. Okay, so I would want to leave you not just with words, but with something that has carried me through many of my own spirals, and it's एक और डॉक्टर उमर को शायद ज़्यादा पता होगा, ये नज़्म तो शायद नहीं है, ख़ता है, आई एम नॉट श्योर. ये फैज़ अहमद फैज़ साहब की एक कि ये नैरा नूर साहिबा ने गाया है इसको. इसका उन्वान है मेरा दर्द नगमाए बे सदा मेरी ज़ात ज़राए बेनिशां. So to me, this song speaks of resilience, reinvention, and the quiet strength we often don't see in ourselves. And it is about the space between, it's a nazm, thank you. So this song is about the space between pain and possibility, where reinvention begins. And it's been honestly a very big part of my journey. And I used to hum this along the beach and think about this all the time, and it's given me a lot of clarity. So मैं कोई बहुत अच्छी म्यूजिशियन नहीं हूँ, कोई बहुत अच्छा नहीं गाती, लेकिन बहरहाल I wanted to share this with you because it's been such an important part of my journey, and music has been such an important part of my journey. So I'll start. मेरा दर्द नगमाए बेसदा मेरी ज़ात ज़र्राए बेनिशां. मेरा दर्द नगमाए बेसदा मेरी ज़ात ज़र्राए बेनिशां. मेरे दर्द को जो जुबां मिले, मुझे अपना नामो निशान मिले. मेरी ज़ात का जो निशान मिले, मेरी ज़ात का जो निशान मिले, मुझे राज़े नस में जहाँ मिले, जो मुझे ये राज़े नेहा मिले, जो मुझे ये राज़े नेहा मिले, मेरी खामोशी को बयां मिले, मुझे कायनात की सरवरी, मुझे कायनात की सरवरी, मुझे दौलते दो जहां मिले, मुझे दौलते दो जहां मिले. Okay. So I thank you very much. So that I just wanted to, yeah, I've got some some comments. Beautiful presentation, makes me do a critical self-analysis. I need to find new pathways. That's very true, and we're all on that journey. So yes, thank you very much. I wanted to ask anybody if they had any questions about this.
Before this, मैं chat पे आके तारीफ नहीं करना चाह रहा था. I wanted to come on the mic and say a big thank you to you. This was such a nice presentation, and oh my God, you were brilliant with your voice. I don't know why were you thinking that you would not be good today.
2-3 दिन से बिल्कुल ही प्रैक्टिस नहीं किया था, इसलिए थोड़ी सी घबराहट थी, but thank you very much. But I really enjoyed this session, and I hope that everybody, it gave some people food for thought. And that's what the whole purpose of this was.
Thank you so much, Saima.
Thank
Lovely
you.
presentation.
Thank you very much. I've got a comment. It truly prompted deep self-reflection and encouraged me to discover new pathways for growth. Oh, that's great. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them about the model or otherwise. God, I was just able to log in. Please share a little bit about your connection with this song. Thank you for sharing your story so openly. Thank you. Well, yeah, I think that this Nazm, basically, when I understood what it was about, and it's about that we all have trials and struggles in our life, because Allah Ta'ala ne hum sabko mushaqqat mein paida kiya hai. So we're always going to have that. But once we work through that pain, you will find the purpose in your life. And once you unmask basically that pain, aapko apna pura goal aapko nazar aata hai, which is, what it says, कि मुझे दौलतें दो जहां मिले, तो आपको इस दुनिया में भी कामयाबी मिले. And they always say that once you find वो जो कहते हैं कि खुद ही के सिरे नेहा ला इलाहा इल्लल्लाह, that's what this is about, that you will always find Allah when you really start looking into yourself. So when you find about your own inner beauty, you're always guided towards the divine. So I've got, yes. Thank you. Please do your share your presentation, as I missed the first half. Yes, I'd be very happy to do that. I could, I don't know, actually, aap bataएं, Fatma and Ikra, about how I could do that. I'm happy to share the presentation with people.
Now we can coordinate with you after the session. And we can send all the participants.
जी, बिल्कुल.
Also, if you allow us, we can post the video on YouTube.
Yes, absolutely. That would be great. Any questions at all about this?
I don't really have any questions, but I have a comment to make that we have talked about survival mode, but it's not very easy for people to get out of this because that's where the real struggles begin. And changing the belief system is so difficult because you don't even understand that there's a belief that you're having. So finding your own underlying beliefs is a thing. And the conversation about this is so rare, and even in therapies and all, I have experienced all of it. So how do you think that in a general normal conversation where, like, whenever you're having a conversation with anybody, you can when you start looking at it, you can tell that there is a underlying belief that is disturbing this person, right? How can you generally help them naturally?
So I think the helping is, first of all, if I look at that model, what do we do? So if you have taken time to go through therapy or coaching or whatever it is, you're actually making a space for yourself. So you're pausing, you're realizing something's not quite right, and that's why you're seeking help. And then that coach would help you identify, and maybe you're aware of what that inner critic is telling you, and maybe sometimes I find that people are not even aware, because if I'll ask them, well, what makes you say that? Well, they say, I know that. Well, how do you know it? It's because, as a child, we all have a survivor's brain. So as a child, they say till the age about 7, we adapt. All our actions are guided by this survival part of our brain, and whatever situation we find ourselves in our childhood, our brain adapts to our environment, and it develops certain patterns so that we're always safe. But where it becomes a problem is as an adult, when we don't recognize that there's actually, when we're in that mode of the brain, there's a 7-year-old who's guiding your life and not an adult. So what you've got to do is you've got to identify those inner critics. And maybe that's what a coach would do, is that they would help you identify those critics. And then they would help you reframe those thoughts. And so, for instance, for me, now if I'm getting worked up, so even let's say in the morning, because I had a really busy weekend, and I had this presentation afterwards, and there was this meal, I need to perfect this. I really need to make this presentation better. And then I had to stop myself and say, okay, this is a hyperachiever in me having a party again in my brain. And it's fine. It doesn't have to be perfect. It'll be fine just the way it is. And so once you find that, then you find that you reflect on that, and you will make a certain choice that, okay, instead of, pouring more time into this, why don't I take a bit of a walk? And then I'll find myself in a different frame of mind. So I think, and I'm not saying that this comes instantly. I'm saying that it's almost like going to the gym. It's a muscle that you have to develop. And the more you use it, the more you use that muscle, the easier it becomes. So for instance, before it would take me sometimes weeks to get over something. Now it may take me an hour or even less than that, sometimes over like little things. I'm just like, okay, Saima, that's a hyperachiever, and you just move on. So I hope that answers your question. But if
Yeah,
it doesn't, please do let me know.
yeah, it does. Thank you.
So it's how do we make wise choices? Should we take help from previous patterns? So I think it's about identifying the patterns, Kiran, that you're in. And if they are those same patterns, you've got to sit down and say, well, where did this belief come from? When did I start believing this? And maybe go back a few years, and often it's from my childhood. And then you can just work your way and say, okay, so this is where this belief came from. But I know that this isn't now true. I know that as an adult, I have a choice not to believe that. So this is where it takes a little bit of work and a little bit of introspection. And that's where I think that model that I've used is quite useful, because if you go through that and you start saying, okay, so that is an inner belief, how do I then change this into something workable? So how do I change this positive situation? So if let's say you've gone through an exam situation and you haven't done well, what's the gift in it? The gift is that maybe there are other options that you can explore. And then you can start, on that journey and go towards that positive option instead of being stuck in this negative loop. Anybody else? Okay.
Do we have any other questions? I don't think so. Thank
Perfect.
you so much, Saima, for your time. It was lovely
Thank you.
meeting you.
Thank you,
Hope you
Fatma. It was really lovely meeting you. And yeah, please do reach out if anybody wants to know more about this, and I'll be happy to share any information with you.
Thank you so much once again.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Dr. Umar, as well. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay.
Guten
Thank you
Tag.
so much, Saima. Thank you for being here and such a nice presentation. And of course, for the song in the end. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.